So this topic I'm going to show you is about how to calculate the safety of our lines, mostly I-lines setup. And I discovered an energetic calculation that I wanted to share with the community. So first is my introduction. So far, all of the Slackline manufacturer and Slackline passionate people, we all try to make the calculation of the tension of our lines, the behavior and dynamics. So we use the effort value, the speed value, the elasticity value. Like for example, Augustin just showed on his last presentation. And the point is, it's leading to extremely difficult calculations that need some huge approximations, not huge, but a lot of approximations to make it work. So far, the best work that I know is made from Panos Athanasiadis. Sorry, I don't know your name personally. And here is a link on, to go on his work that is showing online. And this is an example of his simulator that you can find online. With, you see on the right, a lot of parameter lists, but he is arriving to get some accurate or almost accurate results. And I know that Augustin also made his recent app that I haven't tried yet. We just discovered his calculator on the previous presentation today. But all of those calculations need a lot of parameters, hypotheses, and approximations. For example, the hypothesis that Augustin told about is the shape of the elasticity curve. That is not at all representing the reality. Yes. So I wanted to make something easier to calculate, and what I just need to know is my setup safe or not? I don't need to know any of the numbers with, let's say, height of fall, velocity, peak force, or whatever. That I don't need. I just need to know is it safe or not. To make it simple, I don't need the details of all of the behavior, all of the tension values. I never don't need. And the best for me was to avoid the approximations, like the stretch of the shape curve. So now I'm going to present you the energetic approach. For that, I used a first postulate. To create the postulate, we have some common sense that we all know, but we don't know how to quantify. For example, we know that at the same ABS, an elastic webbing will absorb better the shock, the leash fall or the backup fall than a static webbing, but we don't know exactly how much, or is it. At least it's difficult to anticipate, to make the link in between elasticity and breaking strength. And we also know that the longest is the line, the safest, let's say, instead of longest, but the safest, because a long high line will dump more a shock than a short high line. That is why we used to put some elastic webbings on the really short islands and backups. And my postulate is making the link, the connection in between all of those points. I'm considering that every webbing is able to absorb a fixed amount of energy per meter before to break. So 1 meter of webbing is able to absorb a certain amount of energy, which is depending on the specific characteristic of the line. So this amount of energy per meter, I call it the capacity, C. And let's say that it's, again I'm repeating, it is the maximum energy that 1 meter of the webbing is able to absorb before to break. And the unit is in joule per meter. So now I'm going to show you how can we determine the value of C. And this is really interesting because we don't need any extra work that we already do when we are testing a webbing as a manufacturer. Or ISA is doing the same. So I'm just using the curve of elasticity of one webbing. So you can find the MBS value of the webbing, and under the curve you have the area, which is, let's say, the integration of elasticity, the elongation, multiplied by the tension. So if you make the calculation, you will find that this area is equal to the value C, the C value. So the value that 1 meter of webbing is absorbing before to break. So we just need to take all of our stretch curves and calculate the surface under the curve to determine the C value of any webbing. And now I will show you the correlation I made with reality. So first of all, I calculate the capacity of few of our webbings. So the Joker, the Boom Boom, the Abysses, the Skydy, the Green Mamba, and the Cosmic. And you can see that the values are mostly in between 2000 and 3000 joule per meter. And you also can notice that the weakest value is the value of our Dyneema webbing, the Sky Diamond, which is 1400 joule per meter. So even if the Sky Diamond MBS is the highest all of our webbing, the Sky Diamond appears to be the weakest webbing of our catalog, with that way of calculation. And in February, we made a lot of tests, of dynamic tests at Spider and Slackinov. And let me show you a video of the test we did. So we just made a direct fall with a 2.4 falling factor on all of our webbings with, okay, let's finish it. Well, sorry. Where is it? Okay, so we throw a mass with a 2.4 safety factor. The mass was 95 kilograms. The height of the fall was 1.45 meter. And the length of the webbing in between the two web locks, or the web locks and the same loops, depending on which setup we did test, because the main objective of our test was to determine the behavior, the dynamic behavior of our web locks. But the length of the webbing was 0.6 meters, so 60 centimeters long. So let's calculate the energy of the fall. That was the mass multiplied by G multiplied by the height of the fall, which is 1300 joule. And the energy per meter of the fall, I just divided this value by 0.6, by the length of the webbing, and I got 2200 joules. And if you compare with the capacity of the webbings we had, we are in the same order of magnitude. We decided to go for those values for the test. So 2.4 falling factor with 95 kilograms mass, in order to be the closest possible to the breaking strength, to the failure of the webbings, because this was for us the most critical part we wanted to determine. And close to the failure, we have almost the same order of magnitude in between the real energy of the fall and the energy that the webbing is able to absorb. And something even more interesting is, if you look at the three last webbings, the Skyby, the green mamba, and the cosmic, you can see that the C factor is lower than the energy of the fall. So the webbings are supposed to be weakest than the energy they are buying during the test. And now we can have a look on the results. So you have, I just took two lines, the lines with the diamond lock and the line with the Slacky block, the web block, because those are the strongest connectors, and those are the ones the less impacting the behavior than the if we just want to consider the webbing without considering the impact of the line lock. And if we look at the cosmic, the green mamba, and the Skydy, it almost, almost always broke. If you look at the first three columns of cosmic, green mamba, Skydy, we always broke the webbing, or at least we heavily damaged the webbing. While the other webbings, like Abysses, Joker, and Boom Boom, the webbings hold the fall without breaking, excluded for one Joker test. So mainly it's really corresponding, the calculation are corresponding to the reality. And for me this is interesting because it's allows me to think that my calculations are efficient. I think we need some more tests and control to be sure, but it's the first approach. So now I want to make to moderate a bit my conclusions, because this is how does a slackline setup looks, and the tests we made were those ones. So we did only a vertical fall, and not at all a fall corresponding to a slackline behavior. So we made the supposition that this approximation can be done, and we made it because for us it's much more easy to make a vertical fall on a falling tower, like we already use for to test all of the climbing ropes, for example, than using a true slackline setup, which is much more complicated, needs some space, some aid, and much more technically it's much more difficult to do. And you will see at the end of the presentation, I will show you my email address. So I'm looking for, if you do have some reports of break test, of true situation break test, that can help me to make some more comparison in between my method and the reality, I will appreciate it. So I know that in 2016, 2017, Slackinov, they did some few tests. They didn't break the webbings, but the result, when I compare with my calculations, are corresponding in terms of range of value, and the conclusion about which setting is safe or not are exactly the same that the conclusion I obtain with my calculations. And I'm pretty sure Augustin just showed us his latest, the latest tests made. from the ISA. I'm pretty sure that there are others and maybe plenty of other tests that we can use to evaluate the pertinence, the efficiency of this calculation, energetic calculation. So please don't hesitate if you have some reference to transmit me. For sure I will consider it. So now we can go to the results and what is this method offering us in terms of possibilities. So to make the calculations, I still had to make some few hypotheses. My first hypothesis was that all of the mass, the anchors, the connectors were rigid, so they didn't absorb any of the energy. All of the energy is absorbed by the line itself. I had to select a length of the backup, so I know that in the reality, most of the common backups we use, in most of the case, the maximum extra length difference in between the backup and the main line is 20%. So I went for 20%, which is the most critical value. And I also suppose that when the webbing, the setup is splitted, we are not using a full strand of webbing for the backup, but we are using a strand of backup that is the same length than the main line. And to get the 20% extra length, we just use some extenders made from Dyneema, or I suppose it to be really static, so not to absorb any energy. I also suppose that there is no friction inside of the setup, and I had to select a security factor in order to make the calculations, and I decided the safety factor to be 6. This is only my personal decision, and we can discuss about it, but we know that with wear and tear with the web log behavior, the webbing breaking strength can be decreased to 50% maximum. So I wanted to keep every time to keep in every kind of scenario at least a 3 times safety factor. So 3 times safety factor with a used webbing and a weak web lock, which is decreasing at least to 50%, is meaning to a safety factor of 6. Over parameters, the distance ones, I considered that the length of the line was L. The sag of the backup, the sag of the backup in case of a backup fall. No, excuse me. Let me calculate. Yes, the size of the backup, the sag of the backup fall is S in red, and H is the value in between the position of your harness when you are standing above the line, walking the line, and the position of your harness when you fall on the leash during a leash fall. So the real backup fall height is H. Is S plus H in orange. Excuse me. So now we can go to, and I used a slackliner weight of 100 kilograms. So here is again the explanation of H value, the line which is L, and the sag of the backup which is S. So the energy that is absorbed by the setup can be calculated with that formula. And for a leash fall, the energy is not the same than from a backup fall because the height of the fall is not the same. the leash fall energy is 100 times G times H, and for a backup fall, the energy is 100 times G times S plus H. So now, if we want to compare the C value with the energy, we need to divide the energy by the length of the line. And here is an example of curve that I am obtaining with the Joker line. Let's start by the first value. If you look at the green curve, the horizontal curve, this curve is corresponding to the capacity of the webbing. But the capacity I divided by the safety factor, so I divided by 6. So Joker line is able to absorb safely, including the safety factor, something like 450 kilograms, 450 joules. And the light blue curve is the one that is going really low below the line, below the light blue curve is the energy of the leash fall. And yes, let's. I didn't start by the presentation of the curve. Below on the axis, you can see the length of the highline setup. So here it's starting from 0 and going up to 300 meter long. And in ordinary, in the vertical axis, you have the energy per meter in joules. So the blue one is the leash fall value. So you can see that when the line is really short, close to 0, you have a huge energy value, which is 2000 joules. And the longest is the line, the lowest is the energy absorbed by the line in case of backup leash fall, for example. The dark blue curve is the energy of a backup fall in the case of a non-splitted highline. If you don't split, if the backup is going directly from one anchor to the other one without any connection in the middle, you will have that curve. So you can already see that the dark blue, so the backup fall curve, is soliciting much more the line than the leash fall, which is a common sense. In dark red, you do have the energy of the backup fall in case of split 25 meter long. In fad red, you have the energy of the backup fall in case of a split 50, and the green curve is the energy of a backup fall in case of split 100. If you understand well the diagram, you can understand that the dangerous zone is when the values are above the green curve, above the capacity of the webbing. So this is the dangerous zone, and in green, just below the green curve, just below the capacity, you do have the safe zone. So on the Joker, so the curves that you see, the only risk is concerning the short main lines and the short backup lines. So it's the dangerous zone that I showed you. And if we want to calculate the limit of the dangerous zone, we can make the calculation, the energetic calculation, which is really easy. It's a simple multiplication. And we are able to determine that if you use a Joker line, the minimum length of your setup to be safe should be 9 meters long. For the main line, so if you want to have a safe leash fall. If you want to have a safe backup fall, the minimum length should be 4 meters long. I know it's really short, but it's not the same for all of our webbing. You will see later.
You have about 5 minutes.
Okay, let's go fast. So if we consider a dynamic leash, yes, I tried it, but as I don't have enough time, I will pass this. With a dynamic leash, it reduces again the length, the minimum length. Okay. So for all of our webbings that I calculated, I have the minimum length below. For always are short. Joker is 9 meters length. The cosmic, we cannot use the cosmic below 23 meters long, 24 let's say. The green mamba, we cannot use it below 30 meters long. And the same for Boom Boom Abysses. And the really important point is that for the Skydy, my calculations showed that it's always dangerous to use the Skydy in highline. But without any splits. So now you can look the curve of the Skydy, look at the green capacity of the line, including the safety factor. We are always above the curve if you look at the energy of a backup fall. But hopefully, if we split the line, we have the split 25, 50 and 100 meters long. It allows to pass below the green curve, so to remain in the safe zone.
Safety factor is 3 or 6 in this calculation?
6. Yes, this is with safety factor of 6. So if you are over the green curve, it's not safe, but it can maybe hold. And this allows to calculate the minimum split length compared to the splits. If you split at 25 meters long your Skydy, you can use it to reach some lines above 66 meters long. If you split at 50 meters long, you can go above 108 meters. And if you use some 100 meter split, you are not. You should go for long lines, for high lines that are at least 194 meters long. So this is really interesting because it's making the connection in between the length of the splits, the length of the line, and the security. So some few remarks. If you look at those points, you will see that the splitted line seems to be weaker than the non-splitted line, which is appearing to be a nonsense. But finally, it is not. It is just because of the hypothesis of the static extender.
Can you go back 2
yes?
slides again, please?
So Stéphane is asking for a question.
Forward.
Forward, yes. Just saying.
You had this 192 meters somewhere. 194 meters.
Yes.
This is where the load in the line is below.
It is
Below safety factor 6. The energy that's created is below safety factor 6 in the line.
It is.
Mm-hmm. So if the line is shorter than 194.
So if you look at the point when the yellow curve is crossing the green curve, the yellow curve is crossing the green curve at 194 meters long.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that if your line is less than 194 meters long, you are not respecting the safety factor of 6. If you want to keep a 6 times safety factor, you need to rig your line on at least 194 meters long.
This is for a backup fall scenario.
For a backup fall scenario. Okay.
Having the same line in main line and backup.
For those calculations, I considered that we had the same. But it's easy to make the same calculations with a different mainline and backup fall and backup line.
How do you consider your main line? I thought it was just like you have a main line length, and then you have the backup which is 20% extra, but the main line you assume it stretches when you read it? Or no?
En français peut-être.
La main, quand tu calcules, elle est tendue avant de la couper ou...
Ça change rien. Parce que quand tu casses le backup, elle va se rétracter.
Oui, mais
En fait,
It only changes for the splits.
Yeah.
I don't think you incorporate the energy that we already put in when we tension the line, right?
It is. Yes, Augustin was asking about the pretension of the main line. And I have a few slides later, I will discuss about it. But effectively, the pretension is already consuming a bit of energy, and that energy is to be deducted from the capacity of the wave.
One more question. The backup in this Sky D scenario is also 20% longer than the main?
It is. Yes, in those calculations are the worst scenario possible. So I considered the backup to be 20% longer than the main. And most of the time with Dynamo webbing, we are going to maximum 10% and usually in between 5 and 7% extra length for the backup.
Looks like, how many more slides do you have? Because we're pretty much out of time.
Let's go further. I'm out of time already. The limits of this method, it doesn't consider the mainline pretension, so exactly what Augustin said. It can, for sure, on the slides that I show, I didn't consider, but the calculations and my formulas allow us to consider it easily. This was to explain how to consider. I will be very fast. The area here you can see in orange is the area, the energy absorbed by pretension, for example 5 kilonewton pretension. And when you know the energy absorbed by the pretension, you can just simply deduct it from the energy, the capacity of the wave. So let's go further. It also doesn't consider the sag of the mainline before the backup fall, because in reality we are not in the gray scenario, but we are in the black scenario. But that for me is not so much an issue, because I want to know the worst scenario, and this just adds some extra safety on my calculations.
Bouncing. I think in bouncing you can get higher than...
No.
Exactly. In dynamics, Stefan is saying that in bounce, in case of a bounce, we can go higher than the reality, but it's something like few percent and it's not impacting so much. Yes, because during the top point of a bounce, he was saying that the highliner can arrive above the ankles. My calculations also doesn't consider the wind effect, neither the abrasion and the cutting resistance of the webbing. And the same, it doesn't consider the fact that line lock is decreasing the MBS. Doesn't consider neither what appear when we are not in the center of the line. And now I just want to go quickly onto this part. Maybe I have in mind that those calculations can help us to set up a new standard, or at least, let's say, level, because we're thinking about in terms of level nowadays. Because the ISA is doing a really great job, but as we didn't add so far the connection in between elasticity and breaking strength, we just had to make some types with low stretch and high stretch webbings, let's say. And with the capacity C value, we are able to make the connection in between the elasticity and the MBS. For example, if we do have a low MBS but a great elasticity that is compensating, we can still have a great capacity value. In my opinion, the capacity value is much more showing the reality than only the MBS, for example, or only the elasticity. Those are 3 examples. It's totally random, but just to say that we can still have three types of webbings and determine the category A, B, or C just by the value of the C factor in joule per meter. For example, 1500 would be type C webbing, the weakest webbing, and type A webbing, the strongest webbing, would be with a C factor of 3000 or more. And this is an example of the table that I think that we will be able to offer to the customers with our webbings data. And for example, I use the green number and the SkyD. Let's see the lowest table, which is the SkyD one, because you understood that the SkyD is the more critical one. And this shows to the customers with some really easy to read table that he cannot use the Sky Diamond without making a split connection. And you will be able to see that if he has something like a 70-meter long eye line to rig, he can only use a 25-meter split. If he has a split 50, he won't be able to use his setup below 108-meter long eye line. And the same for 200-meter eye line, he can go for 100-meter splits. So this is a way to explain easily to a customer, okay, you do have your webbing, with the data of this webbing, this is the safe setup that you can rig with a minimum length for each length of webbing.
On the table for the green number, how come you can use non-split on 30 meter, but if you have a 25 meter split, you need to have at least 40 meter?
Yes.
That's the static.
Augustin is having a really great question. But for example, the green number on this table, it can be non-splitted above 30 meter long, but the table is saying that at 25 meter long, you cannot read below 40 meter high line. So this is strange, but this is still connected to the supposition that we use some static extenders that are reducing the length of the backup, because yes, I made the supposition that the backup is shorter with 20% of static extender. That's all. This is something to be discussed. Maybe we can make the same calculations without considering that the extenders are static, and we will have some more logic values. But I'm always I wanted to give the value in the case of the worst scenario, any case. Okay, that's all. And my conclusion is I'm looking for people to help me, because this is really new, a new approach, and I think we still have a lot of tests and calculation to perform. No one did check my calculations. Maybe I did mistakes on it or whatever. So I need some help if some of you are interested. Here is my email address, and I need if we want to go for some for some real in situ test, I need a place with space and anchors and lift, for example. If you have an idea, I don't. Yes, only an idea of the place. I need some efficient brains to make a check of my calculations, to check if I put in everything, if I didn't made any mistake, and just to double check. Some arms, just some people, because alone it will be difficult to do. And also in the financial aspect, if we go for a longer and big test, some shares of the cost will be appreciated from, for example, a professional company that wants to go on test everything.
Renting a helicopter to drop.
By the helicopter for sure, like Augustin is suggesting, I need some financial help. Okay, it has been really fast. I hope you all managed to follow my presentation, especially the ones that who were connected on the internet and not on the place, because I didn't saw if you asked question. And just note my email address, and if you have any question, any remark, feel free to contact me. Thank you all.
An efficient brain, so excuse me here. But in your, for example, when you're showing the SkyD chart and graph, or any of the research, does it assume that the webbing for backup is the same, or does it matter at all in your tests? The same as the main, for example, SkyD main and backup.
Hi Roberto. On the presentation I made, I did the supposition that the main and the backup were the same. For sure, the approach and the calculations are able to easily consider that the main is different than the backup, because when a split of the main is breaking, indeed, half of the webbing will be the main line, and the backup that will absorb the shock is only on the broken split. So this is a really interesting question. On that, the calculation I showed to you, I considered that backup and mainline were the same. But you can reuse my calculations to determine what is the behavior when the main and backup are different.
So it's really worst case scenario if your backup is it's worst case scenario unless your backup is more static.
Yeah, sure. It's the worst case scenario. For example, if you use Slackline webbing, so really elastic one, and backup, Sky Diamond backup, you will be able to reach really better values because the main line that didn't break on the oversplit will dump a lot the energy, and the backup will finally doesn't need to be as strong as it will need to be if the main line were static.
Thank you, Flo.
Any other questions? If not, let's conclude for this talk. Thanks a lot, Florent. We need about 5 minutes to...
Do we have time for more questions?
Yeah, didn't see you. Yeah, Liam, go ahead. Yeah. One more question from you.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
You have to turn the microphone.
Yes, I do.
Thanks for the presentation. I was curious, you said that you did some drop tests on 0.6 meters of Webbings, right?
It is.
Yeah, I was curious how close was the diagram of elongation and force. How close is this to slow pulling the Webbings?
I didn't understand.
The question is, how different is it to drop something and to load the webbing really, really fast compared to stretching it really or relatively slow in a machine? Like, how does it change the seabed if we go faster on the machine?
So, if I understand well your question, you're asking the difference in between static behavior and dynamic behavior, and that personally I don't know. So, it was supposition but the test that I showed you on the drop test showed that it is kind of comparable because the results were I used the C value that I calculated on the static test for the elasticity curve, and I compared those C value in static with dynamic braking strength tests, and it seems that it was relevant. That's all. I cannot say no for now.
Yeah. I'm just asking because it looks like this is what is mostly missing from the simulation earlier. Maybe if we had more data, we could make a different approximation instead of linear behavior for the stretch and the force. Maybe we could have a better idea of how this graph looks like and use on the simulation.
Yes, sure. We need some more tests to validate. Just something, I'm not sure I understood what you said, so it's because of my English speaking. But I wanted to say that I didn't consider a linear curve, so I did consider the true shape of the curve for the webbing. I didn't consider that it was linear like Augustin made, for example, on his previous topic.